Special welcome to today's podcast. I am super excited to be in conversation with Tanith. Tanith, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Sarah.
Let's begin by just explaining who you are. Introduce yourself. Let the listeners just know who you are. Who is Tanith? And also just tell us a little bit about the career journey that you've walked. I mean, before we started recording, I was talking about the role that you have, learning adoption architect. It's the first time that I come across that kind of role. So please, can you just take us on a journey? Tell us who you are and just the journey that you've walked career-wise to be where you are today.
Yeah, sure. And hello to all the listeners. It really is a pleasure to be spending this time with you. My name is Tanith Mohale. I've been married to Kgashane Mohale for 13 years this week. I was raised on a farm in the Karoo, and he was raised in Soweto. So we've made the city of Johannesburg our home. We have 3 beautiful children, Naledi, Moyahabo, and Dineo. We have 2 Schnauzers, and we have 3 chickens who I love dearly. For my career journey after school, I studied a science and technology degree and majored in biochemistry, molecular biology, and food science. And after that, I started working for SAB Miller in a high-performing, world-class manufacturing environment where I made beer for 7 years. So very often when I'm in conversations and in meetings and I don't have all the answers, I'm very quick to remind people that my highest qualification is making beer and not the subject at hand, which it is. I'm a master brewer. Hopefully I can compete with that next year when I start my master's in leadership and education. But for now, my highest qualification is being a brewmaster. And I worked I literally made beer for 7 years across 4 of the 7 breweries. And while I was managing the second largest beer cellar in the Southern Hemisphere, which is in Roslyn, I was invited or asked to move into the learning and development function to review and improve the technical training for the brewing division. And that was honestly my first time that I was exposed to people and development, I'd say the science behind people and development and what we know as HRD or human resource development. And I fell in love. I was immediately passionate about the potential and the opportunity that knowledge and skills development allows a person to unlock meaning and value for themselves, and for business at the same time. I haven't really come across anything more powerful than the transfer of knowledge or skills from one person to the other, and seeing how, when that is applied, how that unlocks meaning and value for a person as well as another, I'd say, system such as a business or community or even a city or a continent. And it's still something that really fascinates me. So 12 years later, I'm still in the learning and development world. I've had various roles with Anglo, with Sasol, managing divisions and provinces and sectors. And then in 2018, I was exposed to the role of digital transformation within learning and development, and specifically how the personal exposure to technology through the smartphones, through apps, have influenced how people learn and how they expect their learning experience to be personalized, immediately accessible, something they can share, and a seamless, effortless experience, the same as the deployment of information from Netflix, from their apps. And that has shaken up the learning and development world significantly, because that is what our employees now require. So I made that my next specialty. I did a postgraduate in future studies, specializing in the future world of work. And I also made the difficult decision to move from manufacturing to financial services, purely because the financial services sector they're a bit more progressive when it comes to deploying technologies and their people strategies. In manufacturing, it's still very operational, operating parameters and processes, and there's a lot of union involvement when it comes to how the people strategy is being deployed. And it's not a bad thing, but it's still very much risk-based and I'd say adherence to operating procedure. Whereas financial services, because they're client-facing, the way that our people experience the world of work should be the same as how the clients experience the banking experience. So it's a bit more progressive, and I've been there for 3 years. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. You've had quite a colorful career, and
Yes.
yeah, quite high flying there. It's very interesting to see that you've been able to manage building your career and also doing your parenting work, which is usually quite difficult for us as women.
It is. Look, I think my husband is the hardest working husband there is. So I think that, just being open about the roles that we play, and not having the more traditional roles confine you, has been, I think, our secret to success. And I personally love the freedom that work allows for me. So hence I'm very passionate about reskilling, because staying relevant, and I've seen, from a young girl, earning that salary, being part of a team, seeing how learning something new has enabled me to do more, to be more, to travel more, to see more, to meet more people. That for me is my favorite part of working. And I think, I've obviously met a kindred spirit with my husband who believes that as well. So we're fortunate with the juggling act, and we make it work.
Beautiful, wonderful. Let's now get into today's conversation. And today's conversation is basically the future world of work. This is actually quite a buzzword right now. Everybody's
Yeah.
talking about the future of work, the future world of work. Can you just explain to us what that concept is all about? What is the future world of work? And please, can you just paint a picture for us how this future of work looks like?
Yeah. So the future world of work is a concept that has been there since work has been there. Um, what it means is to deeply understand how external forces, be it climate change, be it digitization, technology advancements, be it the increasing empowerment of people, be it empowerment of women, be it population growth, whatever those global changes are, how it affects three things from a business perspective. The one is the workplace, so the where. The second one is the workforce, so the who. And the third one is the work itself, the what. So whatever the changes that come into a business, you need to ask yourself the who. Is it affecting the who, the workforce? Is it affecting, or how is it affecting the what, the work itself? And how is it affecting the workplace, the where? And that's pretty much the vast amounts of science and research behind what we know as the future world of work. it's very important to deeply understand what those changes are and how it impacts your business in terms of the who, the what, and the where. And for me, more specifically, what opportunities can you gain from it? So, for example, as we know with COVID, the where was changed significantly. Whether we liked it or not, we found that we can work outside the traditional workplace. And that was it was actually disrupted and accelerated hugely. Similar with the workforce. So where traditionally you've got full-time employees, now you've got full-time employees, you've got contract employees, you've got crowdsourcing, and you've got the gig economy. You can find the specific skill set across the world. You can navigate things like time difference and even language barriers. So the who has radically changed. And the what, I think that's been also extensively covered, more specifically from a digital transformation perspective. As the world has adopted a lot more technologies, as simple tasks is now automated, but as we've pretty much moved from one, industry to the fourth industrial revolution. So from an industry perspective, we've revolutioned out of manufacturing towards the information age, towards the experience age. All of that has radically influenced what people do. And that sums up what the future world of work entails from a topic perspective, and hopefully the importance of deeply understanding how that affects a business strategy.
Very interesting, explanation that you bring. Because when people actually think of the future world of work, they actually just think of the future. Like
Yes,
how will work unfold, how will
yes.
work unfold in the future. How do you relate your explanation to that kind of thinking? For people who are thinking the future world of work is the future.
I usually just relate it to a personal experience. I think if you are parenting in this day and age, what worked 10 years ago does not work now. So most people relate to that. If you think of how you navigated the year 2020 and the year 2021 as somebody who was employed or as somebody who was retrenched, and then, as a job seeker, you'll deeply understand how the world of work impacts your now in a very specific way. When it comes to the future, the reason why we need to research and study the future as much as we study history is because the more we know about the future, the more we can see what the trend is, and you project the trend, the more you can influence your desired future. So, for example, if you're a business owner and you've got a very strong people balance sheet, meaning you like the people you work, who you've employed, they're an asset to your company, you pretty much are who you are because of the people that you've hired. You've got a strong culture. People get together, they have tea in the afternoons, they've got work, they're friends as well as colleagues. So it's something that you're deeply proud of. If you know that in 5 years' time, the way that you're going to be doing work is not the same as the way you're going to be doing now, you need to understand how that's going to impact them. If their skill sets, if you still want to keep them, you need to ask yourself the question, how am I going to keep them relevant so that they are still with a company, they still want to be with a company, they're still connected to the vision and the purpose, they still feel valued, they still can contribute, they can still be flexible if they ask for more flexibility. So those are the questions you need to ask, because that is whether you like it or not, the trends that will come to you in the future. So the benefit of studying the future is to see how you can shape that, and you can own your desired future, knowing that these trends are there. We know that the world is going to become more accelerated. We know that the STEM skills are going to become more in demand. We know that the workforce is going to become more diverse. We know that client centricity and hyper personalization and hyper connectivity is going to become more prevalent. We know that cybersecurity and risk and false information is only going to increase. We know all of that. So the onus from a business perspective is to choose now how you're going to respond, so that you're still profitable and you still have a business and you're still able to be relevant in the future.
Wonderful, beautifully explained. Let's look at the trends. What trends are you seeing? I know you've touched a little bit as you were
Yeah.
explaining, but what trends are you seeing? Are you seeing? When it comes to the workplace and just the future of work in general.
Yeah, so there's a lot of reputable articles on the future world of work for the year 2030, for the year 2040. And for those listeners whose curiosity has been sparked in this podcast, I can highly encourage you just to do a Google search and to have a look at those documents, either from Deloitte or Korn Ferry or the World Economic Forum, McKinsey, PwC. Most of the consulting houses have freely available articles on the future world of work and the trends. However, for today, if we go back to the definition, which is the who, the what, and the where, let me explain a couple of those, of how those trends affect those three categories that we've defined as the world of work. So from a what perspective, so what work is going to be changing, and and the trends that we see that's going to affect the type of work that we do. There, we've got to start with a acceleration of digital transformation, where it now cuts across all sectors, it cuts across all industries, it cuts across all countries. So we've got to acknowledge that the acceleration of technology and technology deployments and digital transformation is something that is going to radically influence the type of work that people do. With that is the business construct. So the traditional business construct, which was more command and control, lots of layers, executives making all the decisions, being expected to know all the answers, that is also radically changing. So you'll see that there's less hierarchical levels. The way of work is very fluid, very agile, very project-based as well. And one that I find quite interesting is with companies having to deploy or think about a more personal, customized service offering, be it a product or a service, and deeply understanding their client base and creating that personal experience. The cookie cutter approach to produce it no longer applies. So again, if you think about the first car that was factored by Ford, it was black, there was one shape, and that was it. That was the only option available. And you think of just how the automobile industry has transformed radically over the past couple of years. You can literally choose all your finishes, all your colors. So that hyper-personalized approach means that our people need to be more productive. They need to be able to think on their feet. They need to be able to deal with a lot more complexity in order to deliver this seamless, effortless, customized experience on repeat. So that's a big challenge in terms of work and who you deploy and how you reskill. And we'll get to that, I'm sure. So hyper-personalization, increase in productivity. And then the other one is what we call industry mashups. So there, the two examples that comes to mind is the retail industry, where they needed to pivot quite quickly, where in the past, they expected people to come to their shops and only buy what they've made available. Now suddenly they needed to deploy an online market, and with COVID, they've also recently deployed transport. The 60-minute and all the. With that comes the apps. With that comes the trust factor. So they've entered into transporting goods to the customer, and so those are two industries that have partnered. And locally, we've got Pep stores. That's a clothing, traditionally a clothing retail shop, but now it's a courier service as well. So you can post a book for 50 Rand from Johannesburg to Hoedspruit, or from one Pep store shop to another Pep store shop. So that's an example of an industry mashup. And that will also, as you can imagine, change the type of work that is required. If you think of the who, the first ones that come to mind is the hybrid and remote way of working, and the all the conversations around productivity, around whether the line manager needs to be in direct contact or needs to see the person working. So that's definitely a trend in terms of flexibility, flexi time and flexi place. And then when it comes to the type of people, the workforce themselves, the power shift has definitely moved towards the employee, where scarce and critical skills is a huge reality for different reasons, based on the country that you're working in. You've got the aged workforce, you've got the STEM scarce skills on the African context, or in the African context. And people, we have found with the younger generations, needs to connect with the company's purpose a lot more than the paycheck that they receive. They need to know that they're part of something that they can resonate with in their personal capacity. So diversity and inclusion, sustainable way of business, what are you doing for the communities that you operate in? So they deeply need to resonate with a purpose beyond the paycheck. And if they don't feel that, they will leave. So there's a very different workforce that's coming into the market. And these are just a couple of the trends that we've seen within the future world of work.
Very, very interesting. You highlight quite a lot of interesting shifts that have happened. I am quite fascinated by just the way there's even been power shift in terms of who owns the power. You talked about how the employees now are owning the power, and they've got power to negotiate in terms of their time, that they put into work, whether they want to come into the office or not. So it's quite a journey for a lot of people, especially people that manage teams, to actually acquire this new thinking. It's no longer a command and control kind of situation here, because now the employees, have got a say. I mean, I've got a friend of mine who is in sales, and she's a mom, and she still has to run around, take kids for swimming, pick up kids at school, and so on. And she says she's told her boss that she only starts work at 10. I'm like, you would have been fired many years ago if you told your boss you only started. She's like, yeah, I start at 10 and I work late until 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and that works for me. So it gives me time in the morning to run my own, activities, and then I'm most productive from 10 o'clock. So it's actually just very interesting to see how that shift has come into the workplace.
Yeah. And, it leads into the next topic, which is the topic of reskilling, because the burning platform from a reskill perspective is that the shelf, if you see skills as having a shelf life, it has reduced remarkably. So if there's one thing that our listeners can take out of this podcast, is deeply understanding the impact of a reduced shelf life for a skill. If you think, what is a shelf life, if you go to the shops and you buy food, or if you buy medication, you'll see that there's a due by date on everything that we purchase, maybe other than clothes. But if you look at your yogurt, your margarine, even the custard, the breads, even the medication that you purchase, there's a due by date, meaning if you ingest this after that, you're at risk. And your skill set has a shelf life. And whereas in the past, you were able to maybe communicate in a certain way, solve problems in a certain way, apply technology in a certain way, run workshops in a certain way, whatever the role required in a certain way, that where it used to be fine for 5 years has now radically reduced, especially in the tech world. What you were capable of 2 years ago is not going to cut it. You're not going to be able to solve and scale the requirements with the technology and the know-how that you had 2 years ago. You have had to acquire and certify yourself in a lot of other applications. And that's been the huge transition and impact for people because of the shifts that have affected the world of work. So, for your friend's perspective, where she can become a lot more flexible, it's got to do with the way that sales has also changed in terms of, the way that sales is now conducted. So, and I think every job has actually got the skills life cycle has been reduced, and that's been probably the biggest burning platform that we need to make sure that we deeply understand and adjust for that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and well said. I'm finding that if you actually are not reskilling yourself, you're gonna be outdated. Like you're saying, the skill set have now got a shelf life
Yep.
that's didn't exist in the past. In the past, once people qualified, they just stuck with the same set of skills, until they retired. But now, you're going to be redundant. So then
Yes.
let's talk about, why it's important for people to reskill themselves. What is the competitive advantage that comes with people reskilling themselves, both in a personal capacity and from the business perspective? So, as a leader, why should I be invested in reskilling my people? And as an employee, why should I actually be so invested as well at a personal level into reskilling myself?
It's a good question. So let's start with business first. So from a business perspective, you're in a business, you have a business. The first step that you need to do is to identify your competitive advantage. So where do you get the most value from? How do you get it? So what is your competitive advantage? And you need to deeply understand what that competitive advantage is. And the reason why is because it's probably going to change. What the way that it looks is going to change as the future changes. So, for example, if your competitive advantage is transporting goods and services in the most efficient way, a century ago you were using horses and carts. Then it evolved to a machine and an engine and a car. Then it evolved to maybe you diversify to more modes of transports. Now it could be a drone, but your competitive advantage is still moving goods from A to B in the most efficient and cost-effective way. So deeply understand your competitive edge. And once you've understood that competitive edge, you then you need to ask yourself, this is my competitive edge, this is my golden goose, this is the one that is my reason for being. So now that I know that, how is the future world of work, or even the current world of work, influencing my golden goose? How is my workforce? How is my workplace? And how is the type of work that we do influencing the what gives me the competitive edge, and what capabilities do I need to make sure that I still maintain my competitive advantage? And once you've gone through that exercise, you will be able to see what are the changes that is required. It will require change. It will require people doing their work differently, and by default being reskilled or upskilled, um, and start becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable. So from a business perspective, it's incredibly important to understand how reskilling is going to enable you to maintain your competitive edge and your competitive advantage. And the reason I say that is it's been proven. So you don't even have to do that exercise. I can tell you now, it's been proven time and time again that it is cheaper to take your current people balance sheet and invest in them being reskilled, redeployed, doing new roles, um, coding, designing an app, from business manager to sales, from sales to marketing, from marketing to website design. If you just think of me, from making beer to teaching people how to make beer, to teaching people how to do business improvement, from deploying strategies, how it's just easier to use your current people balance sheet and reskilling them than paying the premium and looking for that scarce and critical skill in the market, because that's expensive. And vacancies, you've created a new design with new job roles, and the minute you've got those vacancies, it comes at a cost. So deeply understanding how you can future-proof your company with a reskilling strategy for your people, your current people base, is incredibly important. And if you think you're still at risk there, best you start having a look at the internships there's so many internship opportunities, young graduates coming in for work experience. That is probably the most cost-effective way to get that new skill set and get that new workforce ready for where you want to take the company. So that's from a business perspective. From a personal perspective, again, it goes down to the burning platform of what you have today is not going to keep you relevant in 2 years' time, in 5 years' time, and in 10 years' time. It's a fact. We can't get away from that. So how do you go about reskilling yourself? And it will be different for different people, but there's the general consensus is we're living in the information age. You've got so much access to information. You've got so much access to podcasts, to webinars, to information. But you need to deeply and very deliberately understand what it is that you want to learn about. You need to be curious about it. You need to be courageous about it. You need to be open to trying something new. You need to have what we call learning agility, meaning you applying yourself even though you don't have all the information. I think motherhood is the perfect segue to,
Yeah.
or going on holiday in a foreign country. It's a perfect segue of kind of going with the flow, not having all the information, but you've got to make it work. So that learning agility and that growth mindset. And in my personal capacity, I can definitely say surround yourself with people who are also deeply vested in staying relevant. Don't surround yourself with people who want the comfort, who are fighting the change, who are permanently pessimistic about, all the things that's coming their way, who's arrogant enough to think that what they have is all that, it's enough. So go with those who's open-minded, trying new things. I'd say from a team construct perspective, I've really seen the vast difference between working in a team with like-minded people. So you're a team of learning and development specialists, and you only really engage with learning and development specialists. What that causes is silos, it causes groupthink, and the reskilling doesn't happen at the rate where, compared to where you were part of a feature team, a multidisciplinary team, those team constructs are a lot more value adding from a reskilling perspective. And practically that's what I've done. I've got my role, but I'm always part of a feature team in another division, doing another piece of work that I know very little about, but the learning curve there is so rapid. So for me, multidisciplinary teams is the quickest way to get that reskilling muscle activated for your business and for yourself in your professional journey.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I like the idea of multidisciplinary thinking, where you're actually putting yourself out there, and a lot of people are quite hesitant. I find they're always thinking, "Oh, but I don't have the skill for that." What would you say to those kind of people who sort of hold themselves back instead of throwing themselves out there to go and acquire other skills, or sit on different committees of people who do different things from what you do every day?
If you're not as courageous as you'd like to be, I would probably position your introduction to say, I'm here to learn. And when you want to contribute, but you feel embarrassed, always open with that disclaimer. I'm here to learn. I just want to clarify my thinking. Please make this this is a learning moment for me. Do you mind explaining something again? Because when you come with that approach in terms of I'm here as a learner, it softens the expectation that you're coming here as an SME or as a contributor. But if you're open to say, I'd like to be part of this team, I'd like to learn, and if there are conversations that's losing you, or if they've put you on the spot, then always just bring them back to why you are there. Make every moment a learning moment. So, use that. This is a learning moment for me. Thank you so much. Do you mind really explaining that again? Or do you mind if you give me the opportunity to explain what you said in my own words so I can deeply understand that I'm grasping the concept? Or if they give you tasks, you go, thank you for this learning opportunity. Do you mind if I'm going to ask you for feedback before I present, just in case I may have missed some things. So lead with the fact that you're learning, and lead with the fact that it's learning moments for you. Hope that helps.
I love that practical advice. So practical and useful indeed.
Yeah.
So there's also an element of, humility, right? As you seek to acquire new skills. You put yourself out there, but you go as a learner and you make it known to everybody that you're there to learn. I love that concept.
Yes. Yes, Sarah, again, it introduces, it's humility, but it's also confidence in the sense that you approach life with a growth mindset. So I'm sure you've, heard about Angela Duckworth and, all the work that's been done with the growth mindset. But it comes from the position of, if I don't know something, it's okay. It just means that it's an opportunity for me to learn something or practice something more. It's not linked to my intelligence or my talents and therefore my self-worth. So if you see every opportunity and challenge and horrific feedback and disappointment, and misunderstanding and argument as a learning opportunity, how can I grow from this? What can I learn from this? Because what you're saying is I'm not defined by this. I'm not defined by my certificate. I'm not defined by my role. I'm not defined by my experience. I'm not defined by what's happened to me. That does not define me. I define myself by learning and being able to use what I've learned to improve who I am and what I know. Because I can. It's not linked to an intelligence barrier. It's not linked to a talent barrier. And that's the growth mindset. So the minute you deploy that, and all it takes is for you to reflect on where you are today compared to where you were 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and even as a teenager. And if you can see that you have evolved, you have grown, then that should take you and it should allow you to be courageous enough to take that step and continue to be a learner.
Beautiful, beautiful. So before we start concluding our conversation, I want us to talk about the reskilling strategy. How important is that? Do you think companies should be thinking about putting in place a reskilling strategy?
I do. I think it's more important. I think it should be front of mind. It generally is. I think, if from all the surveys that we've seen and the benchmarks that we've seen across the globe, it is, especially post-COVID, we've got statistics of, up to 7 out of 10 CEOs believe that the capability gap to get the business to where they want it to be and to stay relevant in this ever-changing, more complex world, more consumer-centric world, lies in the skills and capabilities of our people. And the more obvious one has got to do with the digitization and the acquisition of skills such as data science, data management, data governance, cybersecurity, AI, automation, software engineering, because that allows a business to scale and cross divides that it never used to be able to do from a traditional business model perspective. But you need people to be able to manage that, and in my role, deploy and adopt the functionality. So the reskilling is incredibly important. And we've seen, especially in the tech world, that as those skills become more in demand, it becomes almost more unsustainable to hire them from outside, because it just comes at such an expensive cost. So your reskilling strategy is incredibly important to be able to keep your business and your people balance sheet in a more cost-effective way, and versus deploying this huge and very expensive skill set instead of growing it from within. So I would say start
Wonderful.
yesterday.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, do you have any practical tips that you'd give to an executive that is thinking of putting together a reskilling strategy? Where do they start? What do they do to ensure they've got a strategy that is implementable?
Yeah, I think the starting point would be to understand where their business is accelerating the most and deaccelerating. So we don't talk about jobs dying, and it really isn't that. It's more, as I said, skills that is accelerating, and skills and jobs that's deaccelerating. So learning and development is still there, but it's just done in a very different way. So from a business perspective, once you deeply understand your business strategy, your competitive advantage, and where you're going to create value from a business perspective, you'll quickly be able to see what parts of the business is accelerating and what parts of the business is deaccelerating. So, for example, in financial services, we know the parts of the business that's accelerating is the mobile um, environment where people are doing, well, now 99% of transactions are done via their mobile. Where it's deaccelerating is in the branch. So people are going into the branch maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, but they're accessing their mobile app maybe once or twice a day. So we know that. And once you understand that, again, you go back to the where, the who, and the what, and there you start reskilling based on what they need to do, based on what problems they need to solve, based on what work objectives they need to achieve, and you start putting in your training. Sure, definitely content, but the most important is context. So take Peter from the branch and pair him up with Margaret in software development, and see how that on-the-job coaching can be fostered. So that's, but if it's also something that's not your core skill, then you get somebody in to help you put a reskilling strategy together. But that, I would say, that would be the starting point.
Beautiful, beautiful. I know we've talked about the practical tips. Do you have any still in the bag? The practical tips that people can latch onto as business leaders or in their personal lives when it comes to reskilling?
Yeah, look, I think from a reskilling perspective, the opportunities on reskilling is that it is the great equalizer. I've seen and met so many people who are where they are today, who started from nothing and had nothing, but because of the world that we live in, with that immediate access to information, freely available information, and their mindset, their growth mindset, their learning agility, their determination, they were able to acquire knowledge and certifications and completely change. I mean, we've got so many stories in the financial services sector where we've got somebody that was a teller that's now a software engineer that never traveled in their life, now able to travel purely because of the reskilling journey that they went on and the access to information. So I've really deeply seen the power that the power from reskilling, that we call it the great equalizer, where people from across the world can really access this knowledge and gain skills that they wouldn't have a couple of years ago because of digital transformation and the internet, and just access to information and people. The other thing that I've seen is, although it's a great equalizer, reskilling is also the great differentiator. So although the opportunity is there for everybody, we've also seen that not everybody takes it. But what that has helped us is that we've seen that attitude determines your altitude. It's an old saying, but it still applies today, where, again, we've seen those been given everything. They've got their engineering degrees, they've got their MBAs, they earn their six-figure salary. They haven't done 1 hour of trading. They still believe the earth will be the same for months to come and for years to come, and they are fine. And you quickly see who are the people that's going to take your strategy further, and who are the people that you need to surround yourself with. And that's also been the hard conversation, because we're going down this trajectory. We know we're going down this trajectory. Not everybody's going to take up the offer. So reskilling for me is definitely, one of the practical personal tips that I can give you is be mindful of who you surround yourself with. Are you surrounding yourself with people who are addicted to social media, people who are not doing much with their time? Their week, their 40-hour week is exactly the same as what they had the week before, because they want routine, they want that constant world, and they'll do everything to make sure that the world doesn't change? Or are you associating yourself with people that's sharing podcasts, listening to podcasts, trying something new, putting a challenge out for yourself, putting their hand up for being part of feature teams, because that's who you want to surround yourself with as well. So, yeah, I think that's a couple of professional and personal tips on, on the power, but also the the challenges and the opportunities for where we find ourselves in, from a reskilling and world of work perspective.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Do you have any parting shots as we close this conversation? It's just been so fascinating, and I've learned so much from you. And I just love your passion. You're so passionate about,
I
reskilling and the
am.
future of work. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, look, I mean, my parting shot is, especially in the African context, I deeply believe that our people are our competitive advantage. I do. So, for me, my dream is to see that we are able to believe in the power of reskilling, believe in the power of being able to reimagine ourselves and reskill, teach others, because with that comes innovation, and with that comes opportunity, and with that comes collaboration. So it for me, it is something I am deeply passionate about, but also because our people are our competitive advantage, and the more we equip our people and really deeply understand how reskilling can energize business and economy for our African context, I think we're going to be in a very good position for generations to come.
Beautiful, beautiful, and well, well said. So I share that perspective as well. I truly believe that with the African context, the people are our competitive advantage,
Yes.
and uh, and for me, it's for that reason that I do this podcast as well. Just believing that. If people can learn, if people can acquire new knowledge that they can then, apply in their work areas or in their daily lives, and just make those small shifts and those changes, then we'll be
Yeah.
moving the continent forward uh, in our personal capacities as we all do our bit. Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been
It's a pleasure.
absolutely amazing and wonderful just to be in conversation with you. And yeah, I wish you all the best for the rest of the day.
Thank you. You too. It was lovely to spend this time with you and your listeners, and we'll definitely stay in touch. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Cheers.
Bye bye.